we're going to talk more about this later, but on top of my university position, I have a private studio of about, right now, currently 25 students. I've been crazy enough to get it up to the mid 30s. But I also run the Wisconsin Flute Festival, and I'm one of 2 artistic directors with the Madison Flute Club. So kind of scaling back the private studio a little bit has been the thing to do. So yeah, I mostly work with undergrads and high school students and middle school students, but I love the opportunity to work with graduate students too. I had a blast working with some of Mihoko Watanabe's graduate students at Ball State this last year. So I'm super excited to be here. I love Eber Concerto. I had a student that was working on it this last year, and this particular movement, and I'm a big fan of the first movement too. And Jacob, I'm super excited to work with you on this new piece. Well, it's not new, but it's new to me. Such a cool piece. So you'll have to tell me some info about it when we work together. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, sounds great. So
all right,
start any way you'd like in terms of screen sharing, or
okay. So we'll go in order, I guess. The Eber was first in my list, so we'll start there if that's okay. With, do you go by Sammy or Samantha?
I go by Sammy. I don't know why my name is Samantha right now. It's normally Sammy, but I go by Sammy.
That is totally fine. Okay, let's see. Let me back you up a little bit.
hello, Tina. We have another person from Slovenia here today too, Nika.
Hello.
All right, so Eber Concerto, third movement.
Hello, my name is Sammy Holloman. I am a first-year DMA.
Oh, actually, let me just double check that I'm doing this properly with the sharing, because I know, like, if you share computer sound, optimize, and we'll go back to your video, this should be better. Can everyone see it okay? Thumbs up?
Yep.
Perfect.
Holloman. I am a first-year DMA student here at West Virginia University, and today I will be playing for you the third movement of the Eber Concerto.
Good, we'll stop there. Oh, yeah, fantastic job. Let me see if I can get what's going on. There we go. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful, Sammy. So you're a doctoral student. You clearly have put in so much time on perfecting your technique. You have amazing technique. Your fingers look great. They look relaxed. How do you feel when you play? Do you feel relaxed?
I'm actually so honored that you said that I have relaxed, even technique, because that is, quite frankly, been probably the biggest struggle of my playing my entire career. And I feel like this semester alone, I'm finally like, I think I know how to play my instrument now. So with this movement, I'm finally at this point starting to feel comfortable and relaxed playing it. But like a week ago, I was still very much like, oh my gosh, this is Eber 3.
Yeah, no, I thought you have such, like, you appear so calm and so like well put together, and like this is no big deal. Like, yeah, this is Eber 3, but this is no big deal for you. So I really appreciate the fact that you've been working on it so hard, and that it finally seems like it's starting to click for you. That's amazing. I remember double tonguing was one of those things where I didn't learn it in high school, and it finally clicked as a master's student, and I'm going like, why am I struggling with double tonguing as a master's student? So I completely understand those parts of our development that are kind of late bloomers.
Mm-hmm.
So fingers look good. How does the rest of you feel when you play? Do you feel relaxed, or do you still feel like, oh my gosh, this is Eber 3?
It comes in waves in certain sections. So there are moments where I feel really comfortable and I'm very much like, yeah, I got this. I'm just grooving along. And then there are moments where I'm like just trying not to fall apart with my ensemble.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so tell me a little bit about the beginning. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna play just the very beginning where you're talking about yourself and then you're getting set up to play. And I want you to look at the difference between yourself when you're introducing who you are and the piece, and then how you are right before you come in when you're about to play. Okay, so I want you to notice there are some presence differences there that are interesting to me. So I'm going to go back to my screen share.
Hello, my name is Sammy Holloman. I am a first-year DMA student here at West Virginia University, and today I will be playing for you the third movement of the Eber Concerto.
All right, what do you notice?
I'm very serious at the beginning of this concerto.
Yes, and do you feel that third movement of Eber is serious at the beginning?
No, it's a total party.
Yes, and so like when you introduced the piece, you were like so friendly and so upbeat, and then it starts playing bump, 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 and you're like, okay, game face on. So like, could you bring some of that cheerfulness, that upbeat energy to how you present yourself at the beginning of the piece? And then the second challenge for you is, you know, again, when you were introducing yourself, you appeared to me to be a little bit looser up here, to be a little like you had a little bit more movement up here, and then when you started playing, it was like lock.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, like, could you just relax and just like groove with it a little bit at the beginning?
Yeah. Do you want me to try that now?
Yeah, and so here's what I want you to do. I want you to just introduce yourself real quick, introduce the piece just like you would have when you made this video, and then let that energy transfer over to the beginning of the piece.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sammy Holloman. I'm a first-year DMA student here at West Virginia University, and today I will be playing for you the third movement of the Eber Concerto.
Yes, like already, that was just like, I mean, I know that you probably weren't like happy with how you got there, but like your presence was so different. It was no longer like, I'm the serious doctoral student and I'm going to play Eber 3 and this is so fun and you're coming along with me. So sorry, I probably had too much caffeine earlier. Can you try that one more time? I want you to see if you can get comfortable with that idea that you don't have to be serious at the beginning.
Sure. Do you want me to introduce myself again too?
Yep.
Okay.
With it.
Okay. Hello, I'm Sammy Holloman. I am a first-year doctoral student here at West Virginia University, and today I will be playing for you the third movement of the Eber Concerto.
Already better. Yes, already better. The other thing that I noticed is that your posture is more confident. Your chin is just a little bit more raised. It's not like, you know, sky high or anything like that, but you seem to just like have this sense of like you're really proud about what you're about to do. Okay? So I think that would be something to explore not only with the beginning of this, but then also as you go through. For instance, if we go back to the video, I don't know why it's doing this funny thing. Okay. So now what I want you to take a look at.
5-minute warning.
Oh, thank you. In this first like slightly longer rest after you play the intro, just watch yourself there.
The third movement of the Eber Concerto.
You keep your flute up.
Mm-hmm.
What does that feel like when you watch yourself?
Well, I just look so serious and stern.
Yes, yeah. So, after that intro, let me pull up Eber Concerto here. Okay, so you have your intro. You could like bring your flute down and like make eye contact with your audience or with your pianist or do something fun to just show that it's not just you, like there are other people involved and you want to include them and bring them, again, you want to bring them along for the ride too. Okay, so let's do, I'm gonna share the music real quick. Let's do this first part, this part that I'm guessing your teacher has so lovely blocked in yellow here. And let's do this first section, and I want you to play around with this idea of playfulness and openness and collaboration between you and your audience, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, good. I don't know, did anyone else notice like a big difference in her presence and like the openness of her presence? That it felt so good to me. So let's talk about the technique in here. How are you feeling about the fingers in here? I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but just lay it out there for me.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I'm struggling with is mostly the E naturals and doing my best not to overshoot and crack on the third E natural 2 before 39.
Okay. Are you finding that you primarily have an issue with the E natural before the E or before the A or after the A?
After the A.
Okay. Have you considered lifting your right pinky?
Yeah, it's lifted the whole time. Or no, I'm sorry. It's down for the first E, and then I lift it for the second E.
Okay, perfect. So you're already doing the right thing there. Can you play that opening passage slower, about like da 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 da, like that? Let me just get a closer glimpse at what's going on. That sounds so much better. Okay, can you do this? Let's do dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da, and just go to the A and stop there. Okay, so what I'm hearing, and tell me if you're feeling this, I'm actually hearing a slight issue in the technique on your beat 2 there that might be unsettling you when you get to beat 3.
Yeah.
Are you feeling that?
Yeah, I am.
Do you know between which 2 notes it's happening?
I think it's between D and E.
I think you're right. Yeah. So let's do that opening again, and let's stop at that E in the second beat.
Okay.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, now let's add on the F, and I want you to try to maintain that same control that you had right then. That sounds really nice. So then maybe what could be unsettling you is not only going from D to E, but then coming back from F to E when you're getting ready to go up to the high A. So could you try that group of 4 notes right there? Excellent. And add on the first 3 notes right before it on the A. Really good. Nice. Now go back and add on the first measure that you play in. How did it feel that time?
Really smooth and comfortable.
Excellent. Okay, so now can you start on the E on beat 3? I know we're probably like over time or almost at time. 1 measure before 39, just do the EAE.
Yeah, we're at time.
Okay, I'll take just a couple more minutes. Good. Where's your pinky on the high A?
Down.
Excellent. Good. Do it one more time. Good. Now, here's my thought for you. Even though the EAE is connected, what if you thought of the E after the A as being the pickup into the remainder of the phrase? So what if you think of it, you won't actually tongue it like this. I'm going to tongue it like this just to demonstrate. Sorry about that. Ooh. What if you think about it like that? So try once like that with that actually change in articulation, and then put it back to the regular articulation, but think about the E as leading into what comes next.
Okay, yeah, that sounds wonderful. Do you want me to try that now, or? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Once with the E disconnected from the A in articulation, and then once putting it back together as written. Good. Yay!
That was super easy. That was wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I love this idea of if you're having a problem with technique in a passage, that you need to separate the 2 notes between which you're having that problem, at least for practicing's sake. You know, you might not want to do that eventually because of phrasing or because of, you know, like whatever the gesture is trying to communicate. But as you're practicing it, I love to separate problem areas. So if it's the problem between the A and the E, I separate them. If the problem, if there was more of an issue for you between the D and the E, we would have done that more. We would have separated that more too. But excellent. That sounds so lovely. So I think if you keep trying to do that over and over again, like I think you're just going to be able to come to it one day and all of a sudden it's going to click for you the first time, and you're to need to do that build up to it. But excellent job. I listened all the way through, and you sound lovely. When I was listening to the recording earlier, I had one minor thing that I just wanted to bring to your attention.
Sure.
Everything was lovely. When you get into this moderato aside down at 51, and into this first slightly extended group of 30 seconds, double check that your first finger is coming off for that C sharp there. It might just be getting stuck down.
Okay.
Okay, and that might be another spot where like I would separate the F and the C sharp just to give more prominence to the C sharp so that I'm always getting that.
Okay.
Very good. Do you have any questions?
No, you've been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you. All right. So on to, okay, how do you even say the name of this piece?
It's Ilmake Hasta.
Awesome. And how did you learn about this? Was this something that your teacher knew of and gave to you, or did you find this?
So I actually went to a festival in Finland, and there I found a website where they've compiled all Finnish composers' music, even like to people who were like 16, 17 years old. And they just have this database for compositions, and you can search by instrument and like filter out
Oh, that's so
pieces.
cool. Do you happen to have that website like handy? Like, could you drop it in the chat so I can check it out? So my husband's family is actually part Finnish. They're Finnish and Austrian. So what led you to a festival in Finland, Jacob?
So Professor Esmakopoulos actually sent me the festival information because Camilla Hoitinga and Kaya Sariaho were going to be there. And I love Sariaho's music so much. So I got to perform and work with Camilla on the pieces of Sariaho and got to perform in different things related. The festival was focused on Sariaho and Stockhausen and their music.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's listen to some of this.
I waited without breathing, maybe even left the atmosphere. And then it fell. A flower at my feet on the street and just turning my head.
Good, and I'm gonna stop it right there. It's a really fascinating piece. Excellent job. So Jacob, I think you have fantastic control over all of these changing techniques between the spoken word, the kind of airier sounds. You've got whistle tones, you've got flutter tongue. So I think you're doing a fantastic job of switching and being flexible and transitioning between techniques really well. What would you say is your hardest challenge, like your biggest challenge when you're playing this piece?
I think probably maintaining a sense of control while having it be so free. So especially during the beginning, and there's a middle section, and then the end, a lot of it is very, it feels very free, but also very rhythmic at the same time because of the piano part. So I think kind of having that freedom in the piece, but also the kind of precision and locking in that is required to perform an ensemble piece is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, no, I totally noticed that. And I'm so happy that Dustin sent me the score for this, because when I was following both of the parts, I was like, this is incredibly complicated. And as you got into the piece, you know, they're like, if I was playing this, I don't know what you were doing. Did you play from the score? Or did
No,
you play
I
from
played
the
from
flute
the
part?
part. I played from the flute part.
Okay. And then along the way, because like I said, I noticed that there were some sections that were just incredibly complicated, ensemble speaking. Did you mark in like main cues that you were supposed to be listening for in the piano part and everything?
Yeah.
Excellent. Was that helpful for you, or did you find that you sometimes still kind of deviated from what you were seeing, I guess?
I think there were times where I deviated from what I was seeing, but during, like you said, when the score is incredibly complicated, I tried to maintain a sense of rhythm and that kind of thing. I think some of the rhythms are incredibly challenging just because of our Western kind of comfortability with 5/8 notes being put into 2 beats and that kind of thing. Makes it a lot more challenging during those sections to keep a sense of rhythm with the piano.
Yeah. Tell me about your, so I mean, I know like it's COVID, right? You know, and most people don't even have the luxury of being able to work with a pianist right now. And to take on this piece, I think during this time is like, that's a big challenge, because you might not get a lot of time with your pianist. And so, you know, going into it, you know, I probably would have done, and I'm sure you did, like tons of score study where you're just like trying to basically like unify the 2 parts and see how your part fits in with the other part, so that you can orally and visually see how they fit together. So and that's something that, you know, we couldn't work with unless if we had a pianist here. But you were talking about this idea of control, and in these kinds of pieces, I find that one of the biggest control areas is dynamic control, and how dynamics are made even more challenging by large shifts in register. So, I mean, you could be playing low and super loud, or you could be playing high and super soft, or one right after another back to back. And I find that is super challenging. And so that's actually what I want to work on with you a little bit today. So specifically this idea of high and quiet playing. You do really, really well in terms of like filling up the sound when you're playing forte. Some slight intonation issues, I'm sure you know about them, and I'm sure that you're working on those, but I want to offer you some ideas for high register soft playing. So tell me, what have you already done for high register soft playing?
So it's been a lot of, I do some whistle tones for that. I also do a lot of like moise stuff up there to try to with a tuner, and drones, and some singing and playing in the register, in the part of the register that I'm able to do.
Yeah. Harmonics, are harmonics part of what you've worked on too? Good.
Yes.
And what about this idea of like embouchure in the high register? What is your philosophy on high register embouchure?
5 minutes.
Um, with the high register, I think when I'm thinking soft, a lot more. So still having the focus with the airstream, but the airstream directed a bit more upward to kind of still have the note be sounding and resonant, but um, having, I don't know, like a softer kind of touch.
Yeah, good. Okay, so I'm gonna ask everyone to try this. Anyone who would like to can try this. This will be a little participatory exercise if you would like to. So Jacob, what I'm gonna have you and anyone else who would like to do this, I want you to. We're gonna start kind of conservatively. We're gonna start on just the D above the staff, and I want you to play with the placement of the corners. So just watch. I don't know if you've ever done anything like that, but let's give it a try. So go ahead and just take your D and pull the corners back. So you've got that smile embouchure and then release them forward. So more of like a frown embouchure or even like a smaller embouchure width in general. Let me see you do that. Good, you've got some nice flexibility. Have you done that before?
No, but I used to have a really like tight embouchure, so not necessarily like smile, but like tight in the corners. So
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Also, now that you're a little bit up closer to me, I notice, I wonder, how would it be if you drop your lip plate down just a smidge on your chin? Does that make it easier or harder for you to get a full?
like there.
Yeah, let's try it.
I would definitely have to experiment with that. I'm getting a lot of like multiphonics.
Yeah, and if the airstream is up, that might be the case. So you could always play around with airstream direction too. Okay, so let's go up, and Jacob, I'll have you leave yourself unmuted because I want to hear what you sound like when we do this. Let's go to your high G, a notoriously like sharp note on the flute. So high G. And let me just see and hear you do that change in the embouchure. Yeah, excellent, excellent. So you notice a big pitch difference, you notice a little bit of a tone difference. That's fantastic. So what we have to do when we bring those corners more forward and in is we have to control the aperture from these inner lip muscles. So if you were to like do like a pout, you know, so I can't do like, but anyway, so you're turning your lips out a little bit, and as you're turning your lips out, the fleshier part of your lips is making that aperture smaller. Now I hope I'm not saying anything that Nina is like totally against. Okay. So, but because you're developing these smaller muscles right here, you can control the aperture without tension in the corners, and less tension in the corners means that you have better control of pitch and of your dynamic level in the upper register. So for instance, take that high G. Corners are super far forward. My embouchure or my aperture is super, super small. It's slightly off to the right if you can see it. And if I take the flute away, my bottom lip is turned far out. My top lip is even, I actually have a top lip when I do this. Otherwise, I just like it's not there. But this can help you play these incredibly high notes. I want you to try this out as I'm doing it. So try high G, start with no articulation, just corners forward, using these inner aperture muscles. Everyone can try this. So super, super soft playing. And you're starting from more of a p rather than a t. tension. I hear some pulling back. Let it come. Yeah. And then high A, keep it forward. Yes. Good.
We're about at time.
We'll take just a couple more minutes for him to finish this, and then we can go into our Q&A. Go ahead. Good. Nice. That's lovely. So here's my philosophy on this high register playing. Whether you're playing soft or loud, you do not want tension. The tension is what's going to restrict and kill your tone. If you have a looser embouchure, so when I speak embouchure, I'm speaking of these muscles here. When I say aperture, I'm speaking of this inner part right here. So by having less tension here, you're actually allowing your body more flexibility to resonate and help you resonate the sound. The second you tighten up, it kind of kills the sound. But if I relax, then it's just way more full. I don't know if you guys heard a difference or not. So whenever you have these kind of pieces, part of my doctoral project was on some of Betsy Jolis's music. She was writing back in like the 1960s, and she also, and Takemitsu too. I love Takemitsu stuff. And they have these really extreme contrasts and dynamics. And I find that players who are really strong players, they tend to have their loud dynamics down. Like they're confident, they can go for those loud dynamics, but the soft dynamics, you're worried about cracking, you're worried about the pitch drooping, you're worried about just like being able to keep the note going while you're trying to taper it off into nothing. But by actually doing this kind of reverse exercise where you start with the lips closed, you can really feel how small the aperture can be to help you control the tone on that note. I didn't realize that this was a good thing to do, but I was doing this in like high school band when everyone else had their instruments out and they were like making a racket at the beginning of band. And I was sitting, first chair flute, like, please don't listen to me. I'm just playing my high notes. And I would play them super soft, and come to find out that really helped develop these muscles here. And I find that a lot of my own students don't have these muscles well developed. Does anyone have any questions about this? Jacob, I know we didn't work on like a ton, but this is like such a cool concept that I wanted to bring it up. Does anyone have any questions, or did anyone notice anything with that? There's more to it. Like there's more to work on, because you have to introduce more air pressure, because otherwise the pitch really suffers. But
I think that we often by the way, Nathan, is that a hand, or are you just holding something there? I think that we often, because we're taught to quote unquote create an embouchure and blow into the flute when we start, that everything that our entire approach about creating sound comes from this concept of the lips being open, the aperture being like this. And we're never taught to actually create a sound from like closed aperture to open, and even letting the air kind of like create that space. So what I really love about the approach of what you just shared, with sort of starting with like a poo and letting the air come through, is that it really does give you like access to like how much little space you can have in your aperture, as well as like how the air can be the thing that actually launches the sound, instead of like you with an aperture and then the air coming through it. And I think we don't do that enough, including with articulation. We tend to like ta everything instead of like poo or thu. There's just so many ways of starting the onset of a note that doesn't require like this massive, void between the lips. So I really love that you shared that.
Yeah, that puh articulation is an excellent thing to have in your toolkit. I'm thinking like the beginning of 4A Fantasy, for instance, that B that just kind of appears out of nowhere, like just to do a very gentle puh articulation on that, and let the tone kind of emerge. is such a lovely alternative to doing a to or a do or whatever kind of articulation you would use otherwise. So yeah, great. Thank you for that, Nina.
Yeah.
What questions do we have?
So, okay, it looks like Juan has a question, and then I would love for the studio to hear about, and our visitors to hear about how you're balancing what I like to call a portfolio career. I don't know if you call it that, but you know, where you have like all these different sources of creative output and ways of expressing yourself professionally, whether it's in teaching and performing and you know, or even like service leadership, like what you do with the Flute Club. And you know, ways of kind of pulling together an income from so many sources. So after Juan's question, I would love to hear you talk about that, because I think that's really where we all need to be. A lot of us start off thinking that we're going to win, you know, some kind of job as an orchestral flutist and that will be all we do, or we're going to, you know, win a job as a teacher at a school or band director or something. And really so much of what we do has to be very entrepreneurial and broad. So I just want to make sure we get to that topic, because you're you know, killing it and acing it. So we want to know how you're doing that.
Okay, sounds good.
But, yeah, go ahead, Juan, with your question.
So in regards to that articulation where the lips don't separate for the articulation, I've been practicing kind of a modified, like in addition to that, kind of with the lips between the tongue between the lips. But I find that the onset of sound is not clear, as clear as I want it to be. What would you recommend to kind of help develop that more?
Okay, so the kind of articulation you're talking about is actually what we do for Suzuki students. So if you're familiar with Suzuki method, there's the whole spinning of the rice to form the embouchure. So when we're working with a young student to form that initial flute aperture, the tongue between the lips is what helps give that aperture the shape. And then you're using the lips to kind of create friction between the lips and the tongue. So when you stick your tongue between your lips and you build up the air pressure behind, you have to very quickly draw in the tongue in order to get that immediate response. But your air pressure has to be built up before you do that. I think sometimes what we do is we get so focused on like, well, what's the mechanism of what we're trying to do? And we forget about, okay, what do we actually have to do to start the tone? So I have to say that this is not my preferred way of tonguing. So after my students start, I always switch them over to the in the mouth way of doing it. I find that for most Americans, this tends to be an easier way to articulate just based on the language. But so I'm building up the air pressure behind my tongue. And then I'm quickly drawing in the tongue. So there's not a so that would be me kind of like drawing in my tongue a little bit more slowly and not having the pressure built up behind my tongue. Would you like to try it? So pressure built up behind the tongue and then quickly draw in the tongue.
Yeah, I think what was lacking before, or what is still kind of needs work, is that the pressure to kind of like draw the tongue back faster.
Mm-hmm. And I know, you know, just like you, like if I put more effort into this kind of articulation, it would probably become much more comfortable. But I think because it is such a different way of approaching articulation, it needs, like if you think about how much attention you gave to articulation when you first started playing the flute, you might not need quite that much, but you'll need about that much because you're changing a concept that you had ingrained in you for so many years, likely. So good.
I wanted to add something to that because we have a couple of flutists in the studio who are also string players, both Emily and Katie. We have a violist and a violinist. And, you know, one of my fascinations is when we get to play with string players, we can see their vibrato, we can see So usually when I go to like string recitals, I'm obsessing over like, so is the bow the air, or is the bow the abdominal wall, or, you know, is the up bow? And I'm always trying to like figure out the metaphor for how they do everything. But one thing that they do is they never plop the bow down on the string and start, right? There's always this sense of like approaching. And so what you're saying with like pressure buildup, that kind of like happens with the bow on the string, that moment of like pressure on the string. But with us, it's possible to sort of like, you know, kind of bring it into the space before we actually drop the bow and remove the tongue. And if that sort of, that picture fits in beautifully with what you're saying. So I thought I'd drop that in there.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you can imagine that initial friction on the strings, you know, between the bow and the strings is like the initial, you know, like pressure that we're building up before we release it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Should I talk about the flute club and flute festival stuff and all that now?
Yeah, talk about maybe, since we're limited on time, talk about, you know, what is a portfolio career? You know, how do you piece things together? And maybe primarily like the skills that we need to develop to be excellent at that, whether they're time management skills or, and how did you develop those skills, and how would you encourage us to develop them, especially as students, you know, still kind of crafting our abilities and with a vision for where we're all headed in terms of what we need for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just by show of hands, how many of you, I'm just going to go based off of like the two like main paths that we have in music. There are many others, but I mean, most people who enter a music degree are either thinking they're going to do some sort of performance or some sort of teaching. So how many of you are really like more interested in the performance path? And how many of you are more interested in the education path? Okay, perfect. So as performers, I would say it goes both ways. Performers will have to teach, and teachers will have to perform. It is wrong to, and I did this. I entered my bachelor's degree thinking I was going to do music education, and then getting into my pre-internships and realizing I do not like trying to control 60 to 100 kids in a classroom. That is not me. I love working with individuals. I love like coming up with customized programs for individuals, and I feel much more comfortable in that setting. So you guys have been great. I haven't been nervous for you guys at all. This is great. But I mean, I would probably get a pretty fair show of hands if I said how many of you get nervous teaching or playing in front of other people. It would probably be most of you. And I felt that my anxiety level was just more than what I wanted to deal with the younger kids. So I love private teaching with younger kids. I love doing group classes with younger kids. But I don't like that in the public schools. That would not be the career path for me. And I decided that in my senior year of my undergraduate degree. I went to Western Michigan University, so not West Virginia, but Western Michigan. And I was one of Christine Smith's last master's students. I did my undergrad, and then I stayed on for my master's work. I was one of those students who came into college that did not have private lessons for years before I came to college. I took lessons with Tess Miller, who is a current doctoral student at Michigan State, for a few months before auditions. Successfully auditioned in, and that was it. And so I felt that staying on at Western was not a bad idea. I had a full tuition scholarship with a stipend, and I had lots of opportunities. I had lots of playing opportunities. At Western, the highest degree that you can get in music is a master's. So, you know, as a master's student, you were kind of like you got all the opportunities. So I had an awesome assistantship. I'm talking about this because this has to do with the many hats aspect of what most of us end up doing in this career. I TA'd for theory, for oral skills, for music history. I supervised intern teachers for music education. I played in the graduate woodwind quintet. I taught lessons when my teacher wasn't there. And I taught I taught non-major undergraduates. So it was a fantastic opportunity. I got to conduct the flute ensemble. I got to teach flute methods for the education students. It's a lot of work, but the toolkit that I built up was really, really good for what I ended up going into. So when I left that degree, I had the summer, did my I left my master's. I took 2 years off. I know some of you might wonder, is it worth it to take a gap year or two in between degrees? And I think it was a good decision for me. The reason I say that is because that whole time when I was in my undergrad and master's, I'd been building up my own private studio. By the time I graduated with my master's, I had a studio of 20 private students. And that was enough between what my husband made and what I made to sustain us in a very comfortable lifestyle, I would say. We bought our own house, fresh out of college. And then shortly thereafter, I was asked to come in and conduct the high school flute ensemble for the West Michigan Flute Association, which is it's a really large flute organization in Michigan, probably 60 members, 60 adult members. And then when you add on the youth members, that's probably close to like 80 or 90 members at its largest. So that was a huge amount of experience with conducting, programming, ensemble concerts, and teaching also. So after I left my master's, private studio, and then I also did the conducting gig. 2 years later, decided, okay, I wanted to go on for my doctorate. I really wanted to teach at the college level. And so I did. I went to UW-Madison here, and I was a student of Stephanie Jett's before she retired. And she is a character. She is a complete character. I would advise you at some point in your flute playing career to find a teacher who is supportive, but at the same time gives you a really thick skin. If you are sensitive, you need that desensitization. And she was that kind of person for me. She was occasionally rude to me, but she always had my best interests at heart. She always sent me students. So like, I knew that she respected me, but she was very, very ruthless when it came to delivering criticism. So then when I moved here, I started directing the Madison Flute Club. Since I had come from directing, an ensemble with West Michigan Flute Association, that was kind of a natural fit. I entered as kind of like the assistant director, and then the artistic director, she had kids and decided, okay, she needed to step aside. So I picked up the co-artistic director position, and I share it with one of the founders of the group, who also has her doctoral degree in music. And I think she's from Mexico. She did her degrees down in Texas and then moved up here. So doing a doctoral degree and teaching privately, at the end of my first year in the doctoral program, I had a studio of 10 people. It was a little bit harder to break into the scene here. And then if anyone knows Morgan Davis, she was a flutist in the area. She now lives in Pennsylvania. She had a very large studio, and she ended up giving me about half of her studio when I moved over here when she left. So by that time, I had probably 30 students. So I was juggling a private studio of 30 students. My second year in my doctoral degree, they did not give me any sort of financial support when I came here. So I said, okay, I've done my year in the ensembles, and that's prime teaching time, so I'll see you later. I have to teach. So I did that and dropped the ensembles, but I also auditioned for some orchestras in the area, and I'm on the sub list with Wisconsin Chamber and Madison Symphony. So I still get the ensemble experience, got the private teaching, got the education. I took longer. I don't know, Sammy, are you the only doctoral student, or are there several here?
No, Carissa is also a doctoral student.
Great. So I don't know how long the doctoral program is at West Virginia, 3 years. And that's what it's purported to be at UW-Madison as well, but I ended up taking 5. I got to the end of my coursework and I was like, I'm so burned out because of the teaching and the degree work at the same time. So I took 2 years where I just paid my dissertator fees, And I was practicing and I was teaching. And then finally in that 5th year, the 3rd year after my coursework, I finished my doctoral recording, which has yet to be released, but is hopefully going to be released within the next year. And so that was an incredible amount of work. I don't know what you guys do, but I have, you know, I use the calendar on my computer nowadays. I used to carry around like a big planner like this, you know, it's like this big. And I used to write everything down in there, and I would write everything down from when I was going to work out to when I was going to practice to when I was going to do specific assignments for homework. So that's the part of the time management aspect of this. I'm kind of flying through this. There's like a lot of stuff. Anyway, so after my doctoral degree, there were a couple of one year? What year are we in? There was 1 year where it was kind of a gap in between my degree and then getting the university gig. And during that time, I took more auditions, I practiced, I built up my flute studio. My private studio at that point did actually reach into the 40s. I had about 40 students, so I know, yeah. And that is a lot to keep track of. I use Google Docs to keep track of all their notes. So I just type their notes in there and then they have access to it. So that way we don't have to waste time writing things down in lessons. I did my Suzuki training. Juan's over there going, oh my gosh. But so, I mean, you know, we were talking about like all these different hats that you have to wear. Yes, you have to wear all these hats, but at the same time, like you have to choose what's going to be most important to you. And that level of importance has shifted in some of these things for me. So like, even though I'm still co-artistic director with the Madison Flute Club, I only conduct one ensemble. Whereas before I did 3. I founded the chamber ensemble, which is the adult advanced group. I did the big group and I did the high school flute choir. And then I said, okay, enough is enough. I'm just doing the chamber group.
So it sounds like you're hardworking and you have to be willing to work hard.
Yeah, and
it sounds like you you know, you have to be willing to say yes to opportunities and maybe take some risk. Like when an opportunity shows up that might push you over the edge because you already have too much on your plate. So that whole like ability to really make wise decisions about your energy and your time. You know, it sounds like you're organized. It sounds like you're probably well liked and a good person to work with, or somebody wouldn't have given you half their studio when they moved. You know, and that you're willing to shift and morph as time and your situation requires. And so I would definitely say that those are like key skills for being an entrepreneur in the music world, you know?
And you know, like I think one of the things that I'm doing more now, I'm in my mid-30s now, and you know, like I definitely can't keep pace with, you know, what 20-year-old me was necessarily doing, you know, and so I'm saying yes less, but I have an issue with some of those sayings that, like, you know when to say no, and you don't always have to say yes. I feel like there is a point in your life where you have to say yes more than you say no, because you never know what that opportunity is going to lead you to, what relationship it's going to create, what other opportunity it's going to create. So, you know, it might seem, you know, kind of crummy to take the $35 Christmas gig, you know, that 1 year, but then after you do it, like, you know, all of these people, and then these people are going to be like, oh, I heard this awesome flute player at this thing, I can get you their contact info, and then that might be $100 gig. And then, so don't turn your nose up at things that seem insignificant now if it's going to provide you with a bigger network of possibilities later on. And then once you get established, you can start saying no a little bit more, or thank you, I would love to, but maybe next time.
Yeah, I think there's sort of in closing here, I think there's like definitely paying your dues, you know, when you're in certain seasons of your life and in that building phase, when you're laying the foundation, you're going to work extra hard. You're going to work for things that don't pay as much. And then it's really important to flip into that next season where you're being more, thoughtful about where you put your time and energy. But the first phase is definitely what you described. And I also want to close by encouraging everybody, and also saying that I really appreciate that you didn't lock yourself into what your younger you idea was. You were going to be a music education band director, and now suddenly you're a college flute professor who is the director of the, flute club. And, so that's really important for all of us to remember, because ideas and seeds are planted in our hearts to become something. Like, I wanted to be an orchestral musician. That's what I thought. But then I realized later I didn't really want that. And I'm so glad personally for me that I'm not in that situation. So when you come face to face with these changes in life that either open up opportunities or where you feel something shifting, it can be very nerve-wracking, because you're like, am I losing my focus? Am I giving up my dream to be James Galway? Whatever it might be. For me, it was James Galway. But you have to be tenacious and strong and resilient, and you have to trust that, like, as your seed is blooming into this flower, that it's headed into the direction of what it needs to be and wants to be and has always meant for it to be. But along the way, you're just not able to know what that is. So it's important to be really open to that natural, organic development as an artist, because if you are, then you will become this thing that you were really crafted and meant to be.
Yeah. And
so I just want to thank you for your time and sharing that information with us, especially as we have so many in our group who are in that period of early crafting.
yeah, and it's completely okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
I want to close with that. It's completely okay to change your mind. Never feel like it's too late for you to veer off on a different path. I know, like, yeah, you shouldn't have any worries about that. If you know what you want to do eventually, then just dive headlong into that.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again for sharing your time and your experience and your perspectives and your great questions.
I'll drop my email in the chat in case if anyone has a question that they wanted to send me. This is my personal email, not my university email. So there you go.
Thank you so much.
It was
okay.
All of you. Thank you so much to Sammy and to Jacob for your wonderful playing. It was a pleasure to work with you both.
Okay, goodbye everybody. Thanks for joining, and join us. We have another one on Thursday, and I don't know, check our website, check our Facebook page out. We have, I think, more coming. Tomorrow night we have a recital that's going to be